Hello and welcome to Sunday Night with me, Kwaku Nhyira-Addo. This is the show dedicated to bringing you stories from the best minds in our land and around the world. Today our guest is a man who's distinguished himself in the field of surgery. He's a professor of surgery and the head of the consulting surgeon at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. Professor Nat Clegg-Lamptey is our guest. You're welcome to Sunday Night.
Thank you very much. Sure.
It's I've always been curious about your name, Joe Nat.
Yes.
How did that come about?
It's a good question. Not many people have asked me that question. Actually, I was born or I was named Joseph Nathaniel. But my friends always called me Joe Nat.
Right.
So at some point in time, I decided to make that official.
Wow, that's interesting. Because it's unique.
Yes.
You know, and so if you say, "Oh, Prof. Joe Nat," everyone knows who you're talking about.
Right.
You know, but I think first time I became acquainted with your work was about 11 or 12 years ago, when a member of my own family had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and we met you, and we met your team, and fortunately the treatment went well, and person is still here with us. In fact, that's how I became interested in breast cancer. We'll get to that in a moment, but what was early life like for you?
How early do you want to be?
As early as you can remember.
Well, I was born to two teachers, primary school teachers.
Okay.
And I started school at the Braka Methodist Primary School on Kwame Nkrumah Avenue. And then my father was then the head teacher. And then he left, and my mother became the head teacher there. And so I finished class 6 in Castle Road Primary School.
Okay.
After which I went to middle school. And then after the middle from 2, I went to secondary school, in advancement school.
Oh, you went to Fansifan?
Yes, I did.
Fantastic. You don't make a lot of noise about it, as others I know do. But did you, growing up, imagine that you were going to be a medical doctor and for that matter become a surgeon?
Interesting question. Not at all. I have a very interesting story because I didn't think I was going to be a doctor. In fact, I had no desire to be a doctor. Basically, I didn't know what to do with my life.
Wow.
As simple as that. I encourage people to, to dream and to have 5-year plans, what you want to do in 5 years. But seriously, I didn't know what I wanted to do myself.
Fine.
So after sixth form, I actually did not choose medicine when I was filling the forms for the university. It was only when the results came that, of course, my results were good. So then there was pressure from family. Why do you want to go and do agri? Why are you not doing medicine and so on? So, long story short,
Yeah.
I ended up in medical school, although I didn't choose medicine.
Wow. Fantastic. When did you graduate from medical school?
That was in 1982.
This was at a time where a lot of Ghanaian doctors were leaving in their droves.
Yes. A lot of doctors were leaving. A lot of my colleagues left immediately after medical school. Some left the shore.
Why didn't you leave?
I love Ghana. I like Ghana. I enjoy living in Ghana. I work in Ghana. Simply put.
Wow. Yeah. That's great, and we're all better for that decision, and the love you have for the nation. You chose to specialize in surgery.
Yes.
Why?
Again, I didn't initially want to be a surgeon. This was the story of my life. After housemanship, I didn't know what to do with myself.
Wow.
So I spent a year and a half at the casualty department, where I thought I would spend some time whilst I decided what to do. But two things happened. One day I had closed from work. I was just about to leave when they brought in a man who had an accident. He was one of these motorcycle riders, and his face was completely shattered.
Wow.
We didn't have any plastic surgery units at the time, and I foolishly went back to this man to the casualty theater on my own and fixed his face up. And then I said, well, I could be a surgeon, So that was the first thing. Second thing that happened was Professor Champon, who was then the head of surgery and dean of the medical school, had a minor case he wanted to do in the casualty theater, and he called me to assist him. And after the operation, he said, "Have you ever thought of being a surgeon?" And, you know, you can always tell a good surgeon the way they assist you. You can always tell. So after those two events, I said, well, maybe I should think about being a surgeon. So that's how my interest in surgery came about.
Wow.
But after school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
So I guess for you, the key is that when you don't know what to do, the path you choose to avoid is the one you end up getting on.
Exactly. That's interesting. I mean, I believe God was just
Ordering
my
your
life,
steps.
really,
Yeah.
really.
Wow. And so you stayed on 1982 till date. That's what, 42 years you've been practicing.
I started residency, and then in 1991, I left for the United Kingdom to train there as well. So I did part of my surgical training in the UK.
Okay. And then upon your return, when did you return?
So I returned, started work in Ghana 1st January 1997.
Wow. And then 2 years later, you made a groundbreaking feat of working on, was that the first conjoined twins in the nation's history that were
No, they
successfully?
had been.
Okay.
Right. Well, what happened was I was working with a senior colleague, that's Dr. Hodasi, and he used to act as the pediatric surgeon when the pediatric surgeons were away, and they happened to be away. So there was this Siamese twin which he told me about, and we said, okay, why don't we go for it? So we did. So the two of us, and so you had twins, you had to separate them. Once you separate them, then one surgeon has to take one, the other has to take the other and work on them. So that's what we did. And we worked with two anesthetists, Professor Ponsa and Dr. Eugenia-Lamptey. So with the rest of the team, and we separated those twins. Yeah.
Wow. So you've pretty much been at the surgical unit at Kolebu for most of your career.
Yes, right.
How did you transition from general surgery to breast care?
There was an incident in 1999 when I had a friend called Christy. She was a nurse at the Trust Hospital and who had breast cancer. And I wasn't her primary doctor, but I must admit I didn't know too much about breast cancer. And we lost Christy. And I felt so bad that I couldn't be of help. Not that I could have been because I was not her doctor, but I didn't know much about this disease. And I had lost an aunt when I was a kid as well. But when Christy died, I said, I'm going to devote my life to save thousands more. So I got interested in breast cancer, learned as much as I could, attended as many conferences as I could, and decided to put in certain, should I say, innovative ideas in the hospital to improve the care of breast cancer.
Yeah.
So this was in 1999. So 1997, we had started radiotherapy in Kolebu. Initially, the surgeons viewed the radiation oncologists with some suspicion because, you see, breast cancer initially was the surgeon was the all in all. He decided what to do. I'll give you this chemotherapy, I'll do this surgery with very little consultation. And the radiation oncologist had come in, and the cooperation wasn't that good. But I got interested. So we had a lot of friendships formed around that time. So in 2000, we got together. I mean, I pushed really, tried to look for venues and so on. So we started what we then called a breast clinic, which was really the beginning of the Kolebu multidisciplinary team for breast cancer. This was in 2000. And it was the first MDT in the country, really. So we started meeting to discuss cases, with a number of surgeons, Mr. Bako, Dr. Duai, and so on, and with Professor Vanderpoy and Dr. Yanni, who are still there. So we're kind of a group of friends and so on, and we got other specialties involved. So we started this multidisciplinary team in Kolebu to take care of breast cancer. So now we could sit down and discuss every patient, what's the best way forward, and so on. At the same time, for surgery, Then I was a junior member of the department, so I couldn't really push things, but I had to use my own connections. So I went to see the head of nursing, and I said, I need a breast nurse. I knew I couldn't pass it to the department because I was a chief member. So she chooses somebody from gynecology, and then we organized some training for her, and she was our first breast nurse. Janet Adade, who we used to call Prof, because she was so good. And then we had another and another. And so we now had breast nurses to work with. And again, that was the beginning of the breast surgical unit. So now we had a unit with breast nurses and so on. And eventually had a chemotherapy suite and so on. So we got breast cancer well established in the hospital.
It seems that I mean, from the stories you've shared, you've demonstrated that you have a knack for finding ways to get things done. From the accident center, where you're not a surgeon, but you see a person in dire need of help. You stepped in, did a good job. You get called in to help with a procedure. You did your best. You needed a multi-departmental team. You were able to, work with people to get that done. What do you think in your life, or how did you form that trait?
Maybe there was a little of that already, but I think I learned that in England. I was impressed by their attitude, the way they worked, their commitment to excellence, the way they will not accept it. Something may be working, but they will still tweak it to make sure it works better. And I worked with one surgeon, Mr. Doug McWinney, who was always trying to do something. He was always full of innovation. He was a vascular surgeon, but he was doing a lot of laparoscopic stuff. So he got me to go and train in laparoscopy, go and do advanced laparoscopy. Then he appointed the first laparoscopic nurse in England, really. And then we started training laparoscopic nurses for the rest of the country. So I learned a lot from Doug McWinney. And then, so we had this new laparoscopic nurse. So far, when I came to Ghana, I also appointed a laparoscopic nurse. At Xtra. And then, of course, a breast nurse and so on. So I learned that from them. So if I learned anything from the UK, it wasn't so much the skills, but I think it was more of the attitude. It was the mindset, to make sure that you don't just settle into a system, but be ready to change and do your bit.
How challenging has it been? Because if you look back from '82, when you left medical school and started your housemanship, you would notice, in fact, from your own story, a lot of your friends left. So in terms of patient to doctor ratio, we've been playing catch up for more than 4 decades. The infrastructure itself hasn't expanded, and yet the cancer burden is growing day in, day out. How challenging has this been for you, and how have you navigated it with your innovations?
Yeah, things. I mean, the patient numbers are increasing. Thankfully, now we have actually more doctors than before. In terms of even the residency, now we have so many residents. Sometimes we don't even know what to do with them. But my time, we had about 3 residents for the whole of surgery. And sometimes you had to cover 2 different units and so on. So now we have a lot more who are helping to train. But the numbers of cancers are also in the increase. Certainly breast cancer has kind of exploded, as it were. But I think because of the systems we've set in place, we are able to handle them a bit better. We could do a bit more in terms of, customer service and so on. But I think generally, we are managing better now than before.
Yeah. In the post-surgery care for the family member of mine who came through your unit has been awesome. I mean, it's 10 years past, and there are constant checks in, regular checkups and things too. I mean, what sort of team over the years have you been able to build? Because it's as though every time you walk into the breast care unit at Kolebu, everyone's has their finger on the pulse, and you didn't need to see a specific doctor to
That's
get
right.
a great outcome. How were you able to sort of work with the team to get to that level?
Thankfully, I've been able to attract two other surgeons who are like me. Let me just put it that way. Dr. Dede, who now heads the unit,
Yeah.
and I'm so proud of her. And then Dr. Isafo. I'm proud of her because I taught her as a student in medical school, and
Okay.
then she's come to become my boss. I'm always happy to say that she's my boss. But so it's the same attitude. It's kind of selflessness and wanting to do the best for them. And then I think like attracts like. So we have breast nurses who are also genuinely interested. We have a clinical psychologist who is genuinely interested in helping the patients and so on. So somehow we've built a team who are genuinely interested in helping patients. And that's for the breast unit. But even for the multidisciplinary team, I did say that it's like we are all friends. I'm friends with the oncologists, I'm friends with the radiologists, the pathologists, and so on. So because we are friends, it's actually easy to work.
Wow. So you've got all these fantastic people around you,
Yeah.
like-minded people, similar goals and mindset, and you're doing some fantastic work. If you look back at the early days of the breast care unit at Kolebu and where you are today, and you juxtapose that over what your grand vision for the unit is, how far are we from there, and what's needed to bridge that gap?
What I really dreamt of was to have a whole breast center. That's really what I really wanted. A center where once you enter, you can have everything done, your mammograms, CT scans, and everything. So you have it one big center. And actually, we were quite close to that because we were going to have renovation of the surgical block. There was a plans to have a new building and funds there and so on. But somehow that hasn't worked. But we are making do with what we have.
Yeah. It's, like you said, it's the mindset, being able to do the best you can with what you've got. In terms of your own persona, where you need resilience because you're not always successful at trying to find positive outcomes. Sometimes you lose patience.
Yes.
How are you able to live through that, pick yourself up, decompress, and say, okay, I've learned from this. I've got to get on with the next.
Yeah. So that's a good question, and it's a problem that most doctors face, especially surgeons. And when the outcome is not good, sometimes it lives with you for a long time. But you've got to pick yourself up. So if somebody doesn't work, it doesn't mean you should be so down that everybody else ends up with a bad outcome. So personally, my faith helps. My faith does help. So I can take everything to God and say, this is the problem, I'm down, what do I do next, and so on, and then get up and go again. Yeah.
And for others who may not be able to have a routine or their faith to fall on, what other measures do you think are needed to ensure that the doctor is, because we need a doctor.
Yeah.
The fact that an outcome was not great today does not mean the rest of the cases you have to look at should suffer. And so it's kind of tasking.
It is.
That we expect, I'm the patient, I need you.
Exactly.
You've lost another patient, but you have very little room to, how do other people cope?
It's a problem of caregivers generally, and we are no exception. So you need the support of your colleagues. You need the support of your bosses. And sometimes you need to identify a junior colleague who has had a bad outcome and who is so down, and to counsel the person. Fortunately, we now have a clinical psychologist attached to us.
Okay.
So she's, in fact, there are times I approach her and I say, Rita, I need counsel. So we support each other basically.
Wow. That's important because I recently read a story of an emergency medical technician in America who had joined the service at 19 and unfortunately had seen a lot of trauma calls, so they responded to a lot of trauma calls. And by the time he was in his mid-30s, he had started drinking heavily because it was how he would cope. Um, and you know, because sometimes you've gone through a call, you get to the hospital, and you did everything you could. You couldn't save the person. And then just while you are sitting down moping about it, another call comes,
Yeah.
and that's even sometimes worse than the one that you had dealt with before. What sort of heart do you have to put yourself out there where literally you're giving off yourself to be able to keep doing it day in, day out?
I think the training helps because you go through these kind of situations all the time and you have seniors to rely on. So while before you become the boss, you know, when the buck stops with you, and that's the difficult. When you're a junior staff, it's not too bad. Even if a mistake occurs, you know you have a boss, you know, and so you can always go back and so on, discuss the problem and so on. Your counsel. But when you become the boss, the buck stops with you. But because you've gone through this training, it does help because you've got to pick yourself up. And so that kind of robust training, you've got to be hard. Surgeons, I mean, it appears soft on the surface, but you have to be hard inside. You have to be. Yeah.
Because I mean, if someone's entrusted their life in your hands, right?
Yes, you have to.
You have to be hard to do that.
Right.
You're also an author.
Yes.
How many books have you authored? I mean, I know as a prof, you'd have written plenty publications.
Yes, publications, but in terms of books, about 7 or so.
7?
Yeah.
Quite an accomplished author. And you've got a new one coming out, which you co-wrote with one of your colleagues.
That's right. Yes.
Tell me about it.
Yes, the book is a guide to breast diseases, which I've written together with Dr. Nhyira-Addo of the oncology, or we call it radiotherapy center in Kolebu. Yes, so we've written this book so that we can increase knowledge about breast cancer. We realize that one of the biggest problems we have is late presentation of breast cancer, and there's a lot of misconceptions and myths about breast cancer, and the way to fight them is by knowledge. You fight ideas with ideas. So we brought this book and we use very simple language that anybody can read and understand. And we hope that by reading, people will get to know what it's all about, how to take care of themselves, how to check their breasts and so on. And then we've also tried to answer some of the common questions people have, address some of the misconceptions people have. And we are hoping that with that, it would help our women to take the right decisions. We are also actually aiming at the young folk, those in secondary schools and so on. We're hoping that we will have a generation of young women who understand issues relating to the breast. Because once we do that, then we think that we are on the way to winning the fight against breast cancer. As it is now, we have too many late presentations. And because of that, the results of treatment are not that satisfactory. In fact, in Kolebu, we boast that our treatment of breast cancer is as good as anywhere else in the world. I mean, we've compared our results stage by stage to others in the Western world, and they are practically the same. But the problem we have is that we have a lot of late diseases, advanced diseases, and those have poor outcomes. So it's kind of blurs the whole picture. And so you see that a lot of our patients are not making it because we have too many late cases. And if we can convince people that it is safe for them to come to Kolebu, that they are better off coming, well, not Kolebu, just in a treatment center, really. They are better off coming and having themselves treated, then we think we'll have won the battle. As it is now, I'm not too sure that the education is going down well. It is. I mean, we are seeing those who used to come early are coming even earlier. But we still have some who, no matter
Also
what
still
you do,
presenting late.
will come late.
So there's still some work to be done.
There's still a lot of work to be done.
Well, now you mentioned the importance of your faith and how it anchors you. Ghana is a very religious country.
Yes.
And then we have the nexus of science, tradition, and religion. How are you navigating that? in order to get people to understand the conditions that they may present and the fact that this is a disease and not some spiritual attack.
Yes. Because that's one of the misconceptions. People think that it's a spiritual attack. And so they will go to church and pray and go to prayer camps until it's too late. In fact, in 2005, when I did a study on the patients we were seeing, as many as a third of the patients who reported ended up leaving either before you start treatment or in the course of treatment, you know, and some will go to a prayer conference and then they'll come when it's just too late. So we have this problem, and thankfully, more and more the religious leaders have come to appreciate the fact that you don't just have to pray, but you've got to make use of all the gifts that God has given to people to use. So there's a lot more to do in terms of collaboration, especially with those in herbal medicine and so on. Because much as what they do can be supportive, we think that it should not be the only thing they do. Yes, you can give them the ginger and stuff which will help during chemotherapy and so on, but they should certainly have the orthodox treatment. Because all the people we see who go and try the herbal thing, when they come back, it's too late.
Well, let's hopefully we can get people changing their ways. Now, in terms of breast care, over the years, technology has improved. In fact, even in the way chemotherapy is administered now. Are we at the point where we can safely say that the trajectory on which we are in terms of the development of technology and the new drugs and things puts us in a good place to deal with the breast cancer burden?
Certainly, we can say that. The only problem is the costs of the new therapies. That's the only thing. But if you're talking about chemotherapy, in terms of what progress have we made? So in the past, we used to give chemotherapy on every ward, you know, and it was given by house officers who used to spray the drugs on their white coats and all, you know. But now we've centralized everything. So we now have a chemotherapy suite in surgery. There's one in the oncology department. I know that hospitals also have now got chemotherapy suites, often with the help of one of our drug firms who have been very good, Roche. So now chemotherapy is quite well regulated. And with the multidisciplinary approach, now they get the best treatments that they need to have. So that is fine. Then there are newer drugs, you know. So for those who can afford, they end up getting some of those newer drugs. That is, if the first line treatment fails, then you need to go off to the next stage and next stage. And that's when you begin to need a lot of those newer drugs. But the cost is a problem. Health insurance has helped to some extent, but there's a lot more.
If you look at what India did with their pharmaceutical industry, where sort of learned to reverse engineer other drugs from around the world, should we as a country start strategically considering that sort of thing?
Yes, I think so. And we have good companies here who can. The problem about some of the drugs is that for now, you can't start producing them.
Because they still have under the IP limits.
Exactly. So for that we can. So some of those newer drugs, no, we can't do that. But once whatever the protection they have expires, yes, we have companies here who can do that. We'll push for that.
Now, I read recently, and this is, I think, from one article from Roche, and it has to do with cancer treatment based on genetics. Help us understand where the science is going.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, science is really moving very fast, So initially, we used to give, say, chemotherapy, targets, it just kills everything. Then we went to targeted therapy. So now we target sometimes just a little process within the cell can be targeted. So there's a lot of engineering now going on. So you know that if I target this particular enzyme or something, it could cause a change in one way or the other. And then even with it, like you said, with the genetics itself, not just in cancer, in other things. So we are really moving very interesting days ahead, years ahead. The only problem, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
is the costs.
Okay.
Because it costs a lot to invest in these things.
In the R&D
Yes.
for
And
research and
once
development.
they do, they need to get their money back. I mean, you can't begrudge them. They need to get their money back. So some of this, they are pretty expensive. Pretty expensive.
If we as a country, and of course, in the next 20 years, will every 3 out of every 5 young person will be living on this continent. If the Africa Continental Free Trade Area takes off fully, we're looking at an over $3 trillion economy on the continent alone. Healthcare is critical for development. So if you were to advise the AFCFTA today, would you say we build more infrastructure, or we should keep an eye also on maybe investing in R&D for the benefit of our people, as far as some of the key non-communicable diseases are concerned?
Already, yes. But we need a lot of investment into that. I think we should look at it, but we should not try to do too much. And let me explain why.
Okay.
There are things we can jump onto. I mean, we didn't design the mobile phone, but somebody designs it. We take it and we make use of it. And now we do Momo and so on, which sometimes those who started using the mobile phone are not using. So yes, we should. They have all the funds. Let them develop something, and then we can pick it from where they left off, and then we can make progress with it. And we need to also do research, because some of the research they do applies to them. So we need to know how it will apply to us. And so sometimes not starting anew altogether, but some of the things that they found out, we've got to also now say, how does this apply to us? And I believe that will be a better way of making sure that we don't overspend. Because some of those things, you do a lot of research, you invest a lot, and you don't really find anything. So let them start.
Yeah, the guys from, I think it's a BioNTech, the mRNA technology too, which led to the very rapid development of a COVID vaccine. It is being speculated that it's technology that can be applied to a lot of different things, including cancer treatment. That's true. But how does that work? And can we probably, seeing as it's been tried and tested elsewhere, use aspects of it to leapfrog and create local solutions?
Yes, we can. You see, the human cell is the same. So diseases, what you learn from one disease, you can apply to the other. Especially when it comes to these micro stuff. So the human cell, the basic structure of the cell is the same. It's still the same amino acids and so on. So once you are able to do something with it in one disease, you can actually use it in another disease. So yes. And we have good research institutions, Noguchi and so on. And so, yes, so we can actually use them to our benefit. So we can apply things that have been found in COVID to cancer.
Wow.
And vice versa.
The future is bright, full of possibilities. I want us to go a little back into time.
Right.
First day at Advancement School.
Yes.
What was it like?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, we're greenhorns up the hill, and there were all these big boys. Then it wasn't just 3 years. So, people were in upper six and we were in Form 1. Some of them, we thought they were teachers. And there was my house prefect used to tell us he's been to prison before, and we used to fear him because he looked so huge and so on. So it was interesting. But I was protected quite a bit, I must admit, because my brother was in school, was 3 years ahead.
Okay.
Was in school, so everybody knew, oh, this is Stevie's brother. Then people were kind to me, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
But people did get bullied. But I enjoyed the France film. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I really enjoyed the France film.
Was it because it was on the coast? They felt like you were still back in Accra?
No, it wasn't because of that. But the France film was nice. I mean, they encouraged us to be the best we could be of ourselves. And it was not all just books, but there was a lot of extracurricular activities. I remember all the school conference, school council, mock parliament, and so on. It was no wonder that a lot of our colleagues went into politics. I mean, my mate is Wachi Ajaku,
Okay.
and so on. Wachi Ajaku, um, the High Commissioner to the UK,
Okay.
Papa Oswankuma,
Papa Oswankuma, that's right.
the ambassador to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all mates. Gusi Tando and all them. We're all in school. So they helped us explore things we were interested in. And so I really enjoyed being in transport.
How much of that do you think is missing in the way we're being educated today?
Well, I think first of all, because they spend so short a time in school that there's not enough time to do all the things that you could do. So that's the other thing is because of so much competition that the people are forced to just sit by the books and just book. So that's I can understand why um, they may not have the same experience that we had.
But are you one of the, I mean, there's the debate of, let's go back to the old O-level, A-level system. Would you vote for going back to O-level, A-level?
Actually, not really. I believe in change. I think one must always think about how to make something better. So, yes, A level, well, we tried it. I think it was great. We now have this system. How can we make it better? It doesn't necessarily going back to the old, but thinking about new ways of doing things. I really believe in always thinking how best we can make this. Look at the successes, look at the failures, and try to chart a new way forward. I think that would be.
Did you do any extracurricular stuff? Did you play sport?
Yes, I wasn't that good at it though. I played hockey for my house. And I used to run there the 100 meters. I couldn't run more than 100.
More than 100.
So I did that for the house. Cricket, I tried. I was not too good at cricket, but I tried cricket.
Does that mean you didn't play outdoors as a child, or Chaskele was not a thing?
Oh, no. We played outdoors. We didn't stay in that at all as children. We were always outdoors. You only came indoors to sleep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you were outdoors.
Okay. These days, kids only spend time indoors. And they come out just to go to school and back.
Exactly.
I know. Wow, that's interesting. So you did play sports. You ran 100 meters. Did you win any races?
No.
No, but I admire your honesty. I mean, you're talking about, you did play sport, but you weren't good at it. Not everyone is born to do sport.
Yeah, that's right.
But the environment molded you. And have you always had this temperament? You seem to be very soft-spoken, very mild-mannered.
Yes, I think so. I have. Well, now I actually talk a bit more.
Okay.
But I was really an introvert. I hardly said anything. So my wife says she sees a lot of improvement now.
Oh, so I'm sure she's happy.
Yes,
how long have you been married?
40 years.
Okay, so she's her 40-year labor.
Yes.
Now you talk and she sees improvement.
That's right.
How did you meet your wife?
Well, I actually met her. Well, we're both members of a singing group, Joyful Way. We're members of Joyful Way.
Oh, you're a former member of Joyful. Oh well, once you're in Joyful Way for life.
Yes.
Oh wow.
So I joined Joyful Way immediately. It started in 1972. It started in 1972. Late 72, I joined Joyful Way. So I was in Joyful Way before she came. But that's where I got to know her.
Okay. And so you started courting in Joyful Way and then eventually married.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Wow. 40 years on. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I mean, how has it been for you? Because you have a pretty tough schedule. One moment you're needed, you're working long hours, sometimes you're traveling. What sort of things would you say, looking at your marriage, is required to keep you both successful at home and successful at work?
Initially, I don't think I managed it very well. Especially being a resident, that was difficult because I spent most of my life in the hospital, especially while I was in Ghana.
Yeah.
It was much easier in the UK, actually, much in Ghana. But then what it meant was that you needed to spend time. Any extra time you have, you need to spend it with the family.
Okay.
And spend as much time with the children as possible. So that's what I try to do. Try to have a healthy balance. Certainly in the UK, I had more time to myself, and so we could go on holidays, take the children out, visit all sorts of places. So that was fine. But yeah, it can be tough, and sometimes some doctors end up neglecting the family. But you one had to make a conscious effort not to do that, and make sure that you got interested in the children, got interested in your spouse, and make sure that you were moving together in the right direction.
Looking back at your career in life, what would you have changed if you would do it all over again?
Very little, actually. Very
Even if
little.
you want to win a 100-meter race?
No, no, no. I think one has to accept that they can't be good at everything. One has to accept that.
That's right.
And in fact, even as I progress in my career, one has to accept that you can't do anything and everything. And it's good to be able to hand over certain things to others to do. One should know how to delegate. And it's good when, especially when you've brought others up, you've trained them, to trust them enough to leave them to do what they have to do. Because with time, you've got to devote yourself to other things. I mean, when I became head of department, I literally was head of department, and I just delegated to other things to other people, and make sure that I said my job is to make sure that I remove all the bottlenecks for you so you can do your work. So you do your work, I'll make sure that I make everything smooth for you. Make sure you have water in theater, make sure you have this, everything you want, I'll make sure you have it. Yes, you do the work. So it's good to be able to delegate, good to be able to move on and say, at this stage, I'm going to do more of this and less of this. Um, and you can't just keep doing everything. I mean, there's some operations I used to do. I used to enjoy operating from head to toe.
Okay.
By the time I said, look, I'm not going to operate on parotids anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to concentrate on this. Then again, when I introduced laparoscopic surgery in Kolebo Teaching Hospital, so then I started laparoscopy. I said, okay, now we're going to do laparoscopy. After a while, I said, I enjoyed that laparoscopy, but now I want to do more of breast. So I can't continue laparoscopy. Let somebody else do that. So I handed to somebody. I said, can you take laparoscopy on? Because I need to do something else. If you try doing everything, you end up being a master of none. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you have a clear succession plan. Of course, you talked about Dr. Dede, now, head of the unit.
Right.
How much pride do you get and fulfillment seeing people you've worked with or now work with that you taught in medical school, and compare that feeling to seeing patients who, when they presented, the potential for a positive outcome was very slim, and by dint of your hard work and God's grace, you're able to deliver a positive outcome. And do these two feelings compare?
That's difficult. Yeah, perhaps it's actually better when you've managed a patient and you've seen a successful outcome. The satisfaction is great, But as I said, one has to recognize that you can't keep doing that. So yes, I do take a lot of pride in the fact that there are others who can do it, and I believe they should be able to do it better than I could. And if they do it better, I'm very happy for that. So it's good to know that others can do it. Otherwise, you are there. Some people want to know that, oh, if only this man was here, this would happen. No, you can't do that. You must be able to leave and let the work go on even better than you met it. And so I feel I'm so proud when I introduce her as my boss. This is my boss. I feel so proud.
That's nice. Your space, artificial intelligence, seems to be affecting everything. Minimal invasive technologies like laparoscopy today is being done by machines.
By robots,
robots, exactly. Are you excited about that new development, or you're like, oh, we're going to be out of work?
No. I'm excited by it. I think there's too much to do. That one should not worry about something taking over what you used to do. One can always find something else to do.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm excited by it. It makes life much easier. Um, it started the robotics process whilst the UK started. It started with just the assistance to
To
the
the surgeon.
surgeon.
Okay.
You could wear something on your head, and if you wanted the camera to be shifted this way in the patient's abdomen, you just needed to tilt your head, and then the robot turns it and so on, and then that improves and so on. And now you can sit in the US and operate in Africa and so on. So that is good. It's good for the patients. I don't think it's going to take work from us. No.
Wow.
We'll always be needed.
That's wonderful. Well, it's great catching up with you, and congratulations on your new book,
Right, thank you.
the Guide
Guide
to
to
Breast
Breast
Diseases, and this is going to be available in most of our bookshops, I
Yes,
believe.
it's going to be available in most
Okay.
bookshops.
And I'm particularly excited by the fact that you want the knowledge to reach a lot of young people,
Yes.
because of course and there's a quote I quote something you just said, that you fight ideas with ideas.
Yeah.
If we're going to be able to get people to appreciate that, going to do your breast exam regularly is important. Then we need to catch them young and work on it.
Exactly.
Congratulations, and thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
And for me, these are my 5 takeouts from this conversation today with Professor Nat Clegg-Lamptey. Is that one, you must have the future in mind. Always work to deliver good outcomes for yourselves, for the people around you. More importantly, empower people to also go on and do even better than you. Number 2 is that innovation is a mindset. It's to constantly ask yourself, could this good thing be better? And when you get to better, can you make it the best? If you have that incurable desire to constantly make things better, you'll find ways to do things with very little resources, but have outcomes with great ripple effect in your life. The third thing is instruction or mentoring, that you take people under your wings, genuinely care about their success, share the things you've learned with them, your own failures, so they can avoid those pitfalls in life. And you would have done yourself and the world a great deal of good if you do that. The fourth thing is to maintain a strong connection with your maker. I'm not a preacher, but I can remember the story of the true vine and the branches. It's important that we remain connected to our source of life, our source of being and inspiration, so that in times when you're confounded by the things that confront you, you're able to reach deep into the bottomless power and resource of God's wisdom and be able to face this. Beyond that, it grounds you as well. And finally, that you must be willing and actually anticipate change. Prof goes into surgery, then travels, learns new things, brings new technology like laparoscopy. The world changes every day. No 2 days are the same. Today will not be the same as tomorrow. Neither will it be the same as the next Sunday, even though they're both the same days by name. So it's important that you're constantly pushing the boundaries and looking for new ways to embrace change as they come. It's been a wonderful time talking to you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been another edition of Sunday Night, and we'll be back next week with another insightful conversation. This is where we assemble the best minds. Go forward, make rain. I am Kwaku Nhyira-Addo.